Welcome to In Her Voice. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am passionate about helping women live authentically by listening to their inner voice. Get ready to be inspired by women of all walks of life that have set aside their should-bes and not good enoughs and are standing in their true voice, the voice of wisdom that each and every one of us has inside. Hello, everyone. This is Kelly Covert, and you are listening to Inner Voice. Thank you so much for being here today. I have an amazing interview for you. Today, I am talking with Natalie Matushenko, and she helps people figure out what their passion and purpose in life is. She's a life coach, and she just has like a really, really cool story, and you are going to love. She's wonderful. So wonderful. Let me read her bio to you really quick so you can have a sense of what she is doing and what she's done. Natalie Matushenko is an internationally acclaimed leadership coach, writer, adventurer, and creator of the Passion and Purpose Life Course, which helps soulful go-getters figure out what they were put on this earth to do and turn their many ideas, talents, and passions into successful, purpose-driven businesses and creative projects while living lives they love. Natalie is living her dream life, splitting her time between South America and the US and spending a couple of months a year traveling the world with her husband and 3 daughters. So what we're really talking about today is living your passion. And we're not just talking about an overview of that. We get really down and dirty and well, not really dirty, but you know what I mean, you guys. We're talking practical tools for you to figure it out. And it's just really, really, really good. So before we get to the interview, I want to remind you it's still January. Yes, it is. And you guys know that January is my month of connection. And I just want to thank all of you who have reached out to me, who have emailed me, who have sent me messages on Instagram. Oh my gosh, you guys are totally making my heart so happy by doing this. And you can keep connecting even though January is almost done. That doesn't mean that I don't want you to connect with me. So if you want to let me know what you thought of this episode, actually, why don't you do this? After you're done listening, send me an email or send me a message on Instagram and tell me what is your passion and purpose. And you might be even more clear on that after you listen to this interview. So let's get right to the interview, and then you guys can connect with me and let me know what your passion and purpose is. So here we go with Natalie Matushenko. Natalie Matushenko, I'm so excited to welcome you to In Her Voice. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me here, Kelly. It's such an honor. I'm really excited to connect with you and your audience.
Oh, and I can't wait to share your story with everyone because it's so fascinating to me. And I thought we would start there. So what I really want to know, and I read your bio in the intro, so people kind of have an idea of where you are now, but I would love to know what was the path from you working in a corporate job that you were really good at to traveling and living around the world?
Wow. Well, let me see how I can, summarize it succinctly, because as you know, these things are often a journey.
Right.
I think what I need to mention is basically, I was born in the former Soviet Union, moved to the States at the age of 8, grew up in an immigrant family. And I mention this because it's key to my journey. Basically, while my parents were highly educated, they were starting over from scratch with a young child to take care of. So kind of doing the practical thing, having a career that made lots of money and was stable and safe was, they were preaching this nonstop. And before, as I was going to college, I was actually really interested in psychology and art. I'm a people person, but my parents were pretty much okay, pre-law, pre-med, engineering or business. So business seemed like the most flexible of of the, basically if I wanted them to pay for college, it was, one of these four. And business seemed like the most flexible. So that's how I wound up in a business school. I wound up at a top business school at Wharton, which has like the #1 finance program in the world. And I kind of got sucked into that whole thing, because I was raised with so much fear around not having enough money, that to finally be in this world where, you graduate from Wharton, you're pretty much guaranteed a job and pretty much can make millions if that's what your heart desires. And that's how I wound up in this World Bank job. Traveling the world and making lots of money and doing all kinds of things. But the big problem was that I hated finance. That little
small detail.
Yeah, small little detail is that I'm a people person. And while I love traveling the world for my job and meeting people from all over, I was at the end of the day, because this was 20 years ago, in a navy blue suit with pantyhose, in kind of boardrooms, all over the world, talking about numbers and returns on investments and, all this stuff I could care less about. And so it was a big part, I was basically pretty miserable. And at the same time, I also had a lot of childhood trauma. And so all these things kind of came together in my, I would say, early to mid 20s. I started therapy, basically. And as I started healing over the years, healing a lot of my childhood trauma, the fact that I hated my job and, felt like I was a fraud, because while my colleagues were always reading The Economist or the Financial Times, I was sneaking self-help books. Because we had these really long flights, right? So you had to read something. And, all I wanted to read was, self-help books or People magazine. And so that really was a crucial part of the journey. And the other piece was that in my mid-20s, with the man who later became my husband, we took a year sabbatical from work and went backpacking through Southeast Asia. And this, again, was about 20 years ago. So it was kind of before the internet was big. And basically, you were really out there. It was just like you and the Lonely Planet and calling home once a month just to say I'm alive. And this was such a gift to me because it gave me the opportunity to completely disconnect from the society that I knew, from my family, from all the ways I had been raised, and meet people who have chosen really alternative lifestyles. Things that today don't seem like a big deal, like to leave your engineering job to become an energy healer. But back then, I had never met anyone, at least not on the East Coast of the United States, who had done stuff like that. But traveling around Southeast Asia, I did. I met all kinds, Europeans who were doing all kinds of alternative things. And it just broadened my horizon as to what was possible. So when we came back to the States, I still went back to my high-flying finance job because I didn't know what else to do. But I was determined. I mean, I think this kind of leads right into the theme of your entire podcast, because there was just this pull within me. I was terrified. I was so scared to leave behind everything I had been raised to be. I was afraid to be broke. I was afraid to lose a lot of the societal validation that came with having, a high-flying career. But something in me wanted that freedom and that peace and that adventure that I felt on that year of backpacking. And I was determined to kind of figure out what my thing is and start doing it. And so basically, and of course there's more to the story, but that's basically how I came to, I left that job. I thought I wanted to be a therapist and was taking courses in a psychology doctorate program. I ran somebody recommended a coaching course to me. And this was 16, 17 years ago, when nobody had heard of coaching and everyone thought I was like a personal trainer. So I took the coaching course and hung up my shingle, and I started doing a lot of executive coaching. But then people who I knew who were also in that kind of high-flying job world but hated their jobs started asking me, how did you do this? And I started talking to them about it. And then, from that, basically, I started coaching on it and leading courses on finding your passion and purpose, because everybody around me seemed to just be so hungry for more, for leading a more authentic life based on who they really are. And so, yeah,
I
that's how
love
I got
it.
into coaching and the programs. And then, of course, because it was always so important to me to keep up the adventure and live abroad and keep traveling, because it's in my blood. I'm really a vagabond, but I have 3 kids. So, and a husband who actually really likes his job and is not as much of a vagabond as I am. So, we have found a way to make it work for us where we have a stable home base in a small town in South America during the school years, but we also get to travel tons around the world and spend summers in the US and, just have a lot of flexibility
Oh,
and
that's
enough
amazing.
adventure to keep me sane.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody needs their thing, whatever that is. Well, so what I find super interesting about your story and something that also I saw on your website too is how so many people feel like they're stuck, but all of the things that are keeping them stuck are self-imposed.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of self-imposed limitations, where does that come from and why is it so hard to recognize that we are the ones who are doing that to ourselves?
Well, I would say because that's all we know, right? I mean, I think it just comes from society, our upbringing. When we're little, our parents are gods, basically, and the adults around us and society around us is God. They're the all-knowing, and we take in all of what they present us with, the good and the not so helpful, right?
Right.
As the gospel, and we make it our own. And our mind, they've said our mind is something like 95% repetitive and is constantly recycling the same thoughts, the same beliefs. And truly, our reality is completely within ourselves. But because it's the only reality we have ever known, we think it's the reality. And then many times we surround ourselves with people who think the same way, right? Mm-hmm. Either because we kind of stay where we grew up, or even if we move out of the circle of where we grew up, we tend to attract people who think the same way. And so nothing can shift until something shifts, if that makes any sense, right? Until something new comes in. That's why in my case, it was literally going backpacking. Mm-hmm. And being exposed to very different ways of thinking. Now, again, this was 20 years ago before the internet, so I feel like I had to go backpacking for a year. Today, we're lucky. We don't have to do that. All kinds of information and all kinds of people and all kinds of ways of living are all around us. So we have the opportunity to start exploring and to start shifting, kind of looking wait, this person who has the life I want, what are they thinking? What did they feel? What do they think? What do they think is possible? And how does that differ from where I'm at? Mm-hmm. And start to shift.
Yeah. So what would you say to a woman who says, I'm ready to break free? I mean, what are some practical things that she could do to start herself on that journey of interrupting the pattern, the default pattern?
Well, I always think the first place to start is in getting really clear on what do you want? If you could wave a magic wand and make your life as great as it could be, what would it be? And, I have to tell you, I've coached thousands of people over the years, and it's amazing how many people, especially how many women, have a hard time actually answering that question. It's we're so kind of stuck in what we think we have to do or, are conditioned to do. We don't even know what we want. So I would say the first practical step in breaking free is, getting clear on what do you want? Just literally break your life down into the important categories, relationships, career, spirituality, your home environment, recreation. I mean, everything, all the big categories, and just write down what would a 10 look like? What would as good as it gets in this look like? Just allow yourself to dream and notice when the mind jumps in with, oh, but you can't. Oh, but you couldn't possibly. Oh, but this is unrealistic. It's kind of just say, okay, thanks for your, thanks for your concern. and put that aside. And again, pretend it's a fairy tale. You're creating your fairy tale, not to be constrained by any practical constraints. Because
I love that. I mean, one of the things that I say to my clients when we're doing this sort of visioning work is this is not the time to figure out the how.
Yeah.
Because if we start to be practical, which I hate that word, but if we start to be practical, it's all seemingly impossible.
Of course. But what I have, and I'm sure you have as well, right? What I have seen over and over is that as we allow ourselves the space to vision, to dream, to, just let that energy flow, way opens. There is a way that things start moving. The energy starts shifting. Opportunities start showing up. You meet just the right person that helps you, get to the next place or to the next piece of information, and I'm a huge, huge dreamer, but ultimately I think because of all my finance training and work, I'm also a really practical person. So I tell my clients, you may not be able to achieve that huge, vision, whatever it is right away, but you will definitely get, much closer to it than your mind is telling you is possible right now.
Yeah. The other thing that I like to add on to that when I'm working and when I'm doing this work myself, because I'm sure you're the same way, this is not something that you do one time and then you're complete with.
Oh, no.
This is a practice.
Yeah.
And I always, I vision something, I dream it up, and then I tell myself this or something greater. So I don't have to be so attached to that. Because sometimes I feel, especially with women who are driven and smart and ambitious, it's easy to say, okay, I'm going to go after that thing and be a bulldog for that, when you might be missing out on something even greater than that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I think it comes back to the mind in a lot of ways can only conceive of what it knows, right?
Yeah.
So what we dream today might be so different than what we're dreaming 5 years from now, if we stay on the path, right? So yeah, I absolutely agree with you. It's always like this, or in my case, I just say, or something that's even like for my higher good, like
yes,
whatever it is that I can't see, but that the universe knows is ultimately even better for me.
Totally. Yes. Okay. So get clear on what you want, like have that daydream day, hour every day, 10 minutes every day, just get clear on the vision. And then what?
Well, and then start taking steps to make it happen.
Yeah.
Meaning, say part of your vision is, a completely different career. Like it was in my case. I had no idea exactly what that was, but I knew I was interested in psychology. I mean, there's always certain clues, right? So start talking to people who are doing what you think you want to be doing. Or even if you don't know anyone who's doing what you want to be doing, maybe the first step is to start researching that, Start talking to people, start seeing what's out there, volunteer. For instance, before I left my career, I didn't just jump ship. I started taking psychology courses. I started volunteering at a shelter for victims of domestic violence and their children, and running a crisis hotline, just basically. And actually that wound up leading to my first kind of job in the helping professions, if you will. After, from a volunteer job, I was offered a position running a program for homeless women. And so then, it was easier to make the transition than just quit my job. So, it's like, you never know exactly, but I'm a huge, huge believer in inspired action. Just start taking action, start moving the energy, and the way opens. You will start seeing what works, what doesn't work, the right person and opportunity and circumstances. I don't know how it works, right, Kelly? It's like magic,
amazing.
But somehow it always shows up. So I would say that's kind of step number 2. And step number 3, and they're usually 2 and 3 are usually very concurrent, is work with your mindset. because, as soon as you get clear on what you want and start taking action, the fear will come up, all the ways, you limit yourself will come up. And that's where I think it's so important. I mean, if you have the opportunity, to work with a coach or to work with somebody, that's great. But even, Byron Katie's work, or, there's so many books on mindset and so many ways to just notice when your mindset is not serving where you want to go, and turn it around, basically, and start working with it.
Yeah. And I think coming to this realization that just because we think it doesn't mean it's true. When I had that aha moment in my life, I was like, oh,
yeah.
My mind is not me. Like, my thoughts are not me. And as sort of mind-blowing as that was, as I started to wrap my head around that, I realized, like, a lot of times our thoughts are so driven by those self-imposed limitations, by those stories that our parents told us, by what we think we should be doing, that we don't even recognize that those thoughts aren't our own.
Exactly.
So it's super powerful. And what I love too about inspired action is that when you dream, the question of how comes up. And what the inspired action is not actually the how, but it's the bridge to the how. So you have to go over that bridge of starting to take those steps, then the how is revealed to you.
Absolutely. And sometimes the entire how is not even revealed to you. Just the next step is, right? And that's that's the opportunity to really shore up those courage and faith muscles, or do whatever you need to do to get there, to trust that, it will be revealed step by step. And that's usually the difficult part, right? Because we want the roadmap, before we leave home.
Of course.
Of course. I mean, it's human nature. And basically, I really think this journey to living passionately and with purpose asks us to basically, not have to set out on the quest without the roadmap, just trusting, as each sign comes up, that we're on the right path or not.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about this. Let's talk about faith, because faith is essentially believing in something that you cannot see. So it's believing in that future. It's believing in that vision that it can be possible. So, Natalie, what are some ways that you build up your own faith?
I have to be honest, it has been through experience.
Yeah.
Because part of it, again, I was raised in this very pragmatic Soviet culture. And I don't know, how much you know about the Soviet Union, but think North Korea. It was, right or wrong, black or white, possibility. There was no possibility. And so there was just this crazy negativity and lack of possibility. And so it was, and on top of it all, the culture was really atheist. So you didn't really even have that kind of spiritual piece to it.
Right.
And so in my case, it was a big part of my healing journey. I mean, it turned out that the therapist who really remothered me in my 20s, doing some really extensive trauma work, she was very spiritually oriented. And so, she kind of turned me, I started reading some books, and it just spoke to me. It spoke to something inside of me. This sense that there is a higher power and a loving force that supports all that we do. And I realized that I'm a really highly sensitive person. I think we're all highly intuitive. And I really had a very kind of strong intuition. And so a lot of my healing journey was learning to listen to that inner voice that would guide me, first with kind of small stake things, and then moving on to big stake things like leaving my job or moving the family to Boston, and then later to Colombia. And really with each time that I honored my intuition, I would see amazing results. And that really started to build up my faith muscles, right? Mm-hmm. And then over the years, I came to realize that as I go within and really hear the voice of my intuition and honor it, it never leads me astray. My mind, on the other hand, can often lead me astray. So it's really has been through experience and through a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. Well, and it's about the practice. I mean, my listeners know that's one of my favorite words. We have to practice to get better at things. And it's not practice makes perfect. I don't believe in that, but it's about practicing to make it easier.
Yeah.
And to change our default way of thinking into something that's more powerful. What are some of your daily practices?
Ooh, I have a whole, well, I'm really big on paying myself first. So the kids are at school by 8 in the morning. I don't schedule clients or any work until 10 because first thing I do is work out for about 45 minutes. I meditate for 20 minutes. I do something called the healing code. And kind of depending, and then usually some form of self-hypnosis / intention setting, but like deeper intention setting for my life, for the day, for how I want to show up. And I guess, because I was thinking, how do I really access, my intuition, and how do I make that a daily practice? It has really evolved over the years. At this point, it's literally just asking for guidance, especially before I meditate. And often the answer comes.
Yeah. I mean, going back to that idea of that spiritual connection, you said that you just felt that pull, like you felt that it was supposed to be there for you. And I really feel that our souls yearn for that. Mm-hmm. And it yearns to be acknowledged that it is, that we are spiritual beings. I feel almost we are spiritual beings before we are physical beings. And we get so caught up in the physicality of the world that we neglect that part of us, and it can wither. I don't think it goes away, but it can certainly weaken if we're not exercising that, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And as I look back on my life, I can really see how it ebbed and flowed, because I felt very spiritually connected during that whole healing process. And then, since my oldest daughter was born 15 years ago, and life just got so busy with mothering 3 kids and work and everything, it has really come and kind of, waned and waxed, depending on how much emphasis I've put on it. So it has been a constant kind of an intention to put more attention on it and to make it a daily practice, because without it, it can easily, like the practical world and the material world can easily take over. And I start to feel that lack of connection. Mm-hmm. And then like nothing seems right. That's where like everyday problems become these big things. Yeah. And then the more I connect to my spiritual core, the more, I can be in flow, and none of that other stuff, none of the little stuff really matters all that much, and it all works out anyway.
I just want to say to you from the bottom of my heart right now in this moment, thank you for saying that. Because for me, it's the same. I mean, I have 2 boys, they're 15, almost 15 and 11, so similar ages. And I find that parenting is one of the things that has taught me the most, but also one of the things that takes me away the most from my spiritual center. And it's something that I'm always trying to find the balance point of. And it just makes my heart happy to know that I'm not the only one.
You are definitely not the only one. I mean, what was that book? Something like, before the Ecstasy, the laundry. I mean, I or whatever it was called, Jack Kornfield. I mean, I know that the ideal, is to be mindful and feel spiritually connected no matter what you're doing. But in my experience, I need quiet. I need solitude, ideally nature, just, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of things.
And I think what you just said hits at something really important. You have to know what you need to make those things happen. And I think sometimes, especially if you're just starting out on this journey of self-discovery, you don't always know what it is you need to get to the spiritual place. So I'm like you. I gotta have quiet.
Yeah.
If my kids are home, it's much more difficult for me to even do my daily practices. I have to get up before they get up, or I have to, lock myself in my bathroom and do it somewhere really quiet. But if you don't even know what that is, it's worth taking time to experiment with a lot of different kinds of things, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think I've mentioned, for me, it has been an evolution and it keeps evolving, right? I started really accessing my intuition through journaling and writing morning pages. And that was incredibly effective for many years. And then the kids came along and, oh my God, who had time for journaling and morning pages? I was lucky if I could go to the bathroom by myself. So it started to evolve. And now it's at this place of I just ask for guidance and I pay attention. And I think that's key. Like with experience and practice, we start paying attention more. And the more we pay attention, the more those intuitive hits come. And the more we honor them, the more they come. And I no longer need quite as much, setup, so to speak, to get the information, which is a good thing because I don't have the
bandwidth is not there for that.
Right.
So one of the things that you really focus on with your clients is tapping into what you were put here on earth to do.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit more about that and about how you help your clients pull that out of themselves?
Yeah. Well, it is really my passion in life. I think because my own journey was really struggling with, what am I meant to do in this world? And I don't mean just for a career, but, how am I supposed to live? What kind of family life do I want? Where do I want to live? How do I want it to look? I have had to deal with, in so many junctures in my life, with people closest to me thinking I was nuts, right? Like, who leaves this amazing World Bank job to run a program for homeless women? Who leaves this really kind of utopic Cambridge, Massachusetts, earthy, crunchy environment to move to Colombia, South America, back when, in 2011, when, the only image of Colombia was drugs and violence. So I've often had to kind of listen to my own inner voice and really fight for what it was telling me. Despite everything around me. And so that fuels a lot of my passion for working with my clients, because I find that in general, at some level, people know pretty quickly early on. Like, we start working together and, within a session or two, it's pretty clear what the person's interests are, right? What they're really passionate about, what they're excited about. And that's when the real work begins, right? Because of all the resistance and all the fears and all the ways we have, we fear owning who we really are and honoring who we really are. And so my process in working with people tends to really become that, is like getting clear on what you really want and taking, supporting clients and taking inspired action. And then working the mindset, working the fears that come up, working, all the obstacles that come up as clients continue to learn more about themselves and take more inspired action. And then, of course, as they start seeing results and, positive things happening, it all becomes easier and easier. And,
Definitely.
I work with individuals. I do group programs, which I've done now for about 15 years, which I think are also really, really powerful, because there's nothing like a group of people coming together with that same purpose and kind of supporting each other through both the fears and the successes and the breakthroughs. That really creates a very special environment. In fact, It's pretty amazing. I just heard from someone who was in my very first group course 15 years ago, telling me how, she didn't even know that she wanted to be an artist, and she became an artist, and her work is beautiful. And she sent me pictures of her work. And the part that I thought was really great, she told me she's still in touch, that like 5 people out of the original 10 people in that first group are still in touch and speak like every 3 or 4 months.
Oh,
and
isn't that great?
Isn't that amazing? 15 years later. And so there's just such a power to that as well.
Definitely, definitely. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for sharing your heart and your wisdom and your journey with us today. I so appreciate you. And why don't you let my listeners know where they can connect with you if they're interested in digging in deeper?
Well, thank you, Kelly. Thank you again for having me here. I've really appreciated the opportunity to talk with you and delve into these issues. And yeah, anybody who's interested in learning more about me or my work, or just kind of following my blog and getting a lot of freebies and good tools, you can visit my website, which I'm sure will wind up on the page you're putting together, Kelly.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my website. Oh, sorry. I thought I had turned off my phone, but whoops. Can visit my website. On there, you have access to a lot of free tools. You can sign up for a free 12-day Living from Passion and Purpose mini course. There's also, you can sign up for an interview series for the past about 3 months. I have been interviewing amazing women who have made life changes to follow their passion and purpose and are doing great things in the world. And I have some weekly video interviews that both inspire you to live your own passion and purpose, but also give you great tools and tips that you can start using right now, because these women kind of, and their careers run the gamut in the health, relationship, personal growth fields. So yeah, those are some different ways.
Fantastic. Well, and all of those will be available in the show notes for this episode. So you guys can find that over at kellycovert.com or right in your podcast app. So Natalie, I always ask one last question, the same question to all my guests. And that is, what is your inner voice telling you in your life right now?
Right in this moment?
Or just in general? Yep.
In general, my inner voice is telling me that I am exactly where I need to be. Kelly, this has been a hard one. It has taken a lot of work to get here. And I feel really, really grateful and blessed to have created a life that's really authentically me. And that allows me to be of service.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So beautiful. I got goosebumps to hear you say that, as though it was your inner voice speaking through you. Like I could feel it. Natalie, I just want to honor and acknowledge you today for all of the beautiful work that you are putting out into this world, and for your courage to have faith in your vision and to really stick with it so you can find yourself at this point of knowing, yes, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. So thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Again, I really loved being here with you today, and thanks for including me in your podcast. Really appreciate it. And to everyone listening, thank you for listening.
I don't know what gets me more excited about my purpose and passion in life than talking about people living their purpose and passion in their life. Man, it gets me jazzed up. Who needs caffeine when you can have deep conversations like that? And I so appreciate Natalie just being willing to be transparent and open and to share her journey with us, because that's how we learn. You guys, when I choose these women to be on In Her Voice, I'm not just randomly choosing people. It is with deep intention that I bring people to you to share their stories, to inspire you, and also so you can learn from them. And for me, I always am learning from the people that I'm interviewing, even though this is the work that I'm doing as well. There's always so much to learn. And for me, the biggest takeaway, and it's a reminder that I think we all can use, is we always have to be working on our mindset. We always have to be working on our mindset. We got to practice it. And because of that, I made you a little present. I put together a binge-worthy playlist of episodes from In Her Voice that are all about mindset. So if you want to take a listen to that playlist, you can head on over to kellycovert.com/playlist. And the playlist will be there for you to click on and to listen to right away. So don't miss out on that, especially if this is something that you felt reminded of too. And Don't forget, I want to hear from you. What is your passion and purpose in life? Maybe you're feeling super inspired to do some of the work that Natalie was talking about, so you can really start to get clear on what makes you excited, what brings you joy, what you love, and what you were put here to do. So shoot me an email at kelly@kellycovert.com, or you can connect with me on Instagram. I'm at Kelly J. Covert, and there are links to both of those right in your podcast app. It's right there. Pick up your phone and click on it, and you will not regret it. As always, I want to remind you, just in case you forgot since the last time you listened to me, that you matter. The world needs you showing up in your passion, in your purpose, and doing on this earth exactly what you were put here to do. You are worthy.